What's up? The man, the myth, the legend.
What's up, Emily? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm just going to give a quick overview of Matthew Wurnig is an amazing guy. He's been doing 50 dates in 50 states. And you, if I'm not wrong, you've done it twice now. So you've actually done 100 dates.
Yes. Yeah.
That is amazing. I am so excited. I love your story so much. You're 25, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. So what I love so much about your story is that when I was your age, back a million years ago, I did a similar thing. I went on a 100 date experiment, but I did it all in Northern California. And I love how you're doing it in every different state of the country. That's epic. Amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I feel like, I mean, even for you doing that 100 date experiment, like, and what I'm doing, I mean, we could relate on our experiences, and everybody dates usually within their small town or college or area. So me and you, I feel like we probably got stories for days, right?
I can't even imagine how much I just binged a whole bunch of your videos. I'm like, oh my God, I want to watch everything. It's so interesting. So interesting. So I am curious. I will just let the audience know that when I did the 100 date experiment, dating in quick succession, I coined a term for that called MegaDating, which is dating quickly, multiple people kind of at the same time or in quick succession, so you can really find out who the right person is for you. And so I might refer to MegaDating throughout this because I think what you're doing is kind of a version of MegaDating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I kind of know the background a little bit, but I want the viewers to learn a little bit more. Tell me how you came up with the idea to do 50 dates in 50 states.
Yeah. So basically, I was very bored when COVID first hit and quarantine first happened, and nobody knew what was going on. Everybody's looking at different ways to entertain themselves and whatnot, and everything turned virtual. And I had hopped on Tinder, and it said that you could place your location anywhere in the U.S. for free. And as soon as I saw that notification, like a light bulb in my head went off immediately. And I was just in my small little apartment in North Dakota at the time, and there's not, there wasn't the biggest selection of women in the town I was in. So me having fun, I started placing my location in, New York and LA and Dallas and New Orleans and Miami and all these big cities. And once I started getting matches, then I didn't really know what to do. I'm like, well, I can't really like go on dates with these girls. I can't go ask them to have a drink or go have dinner or anything. And I'm like, well, Zoom's on the rise, everything's turning virtual. So what if I went on a virtual date in every state? And so that's kind of how the idea started. And then from there, just snowballed into what it is of me. After I was going on the virtual dates, I wanted to up the ante, and I decided to go visit them all in person. And so that was season one. And then season two, since I already had built the brand and had that kind of established and laid the foundation, I was like, all right, we're doing season two, but we're going to make it better. I'm going to I'm going to apply everything that I learned and take it to another level, hopefully. So now here we are.
I love it. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from the first season to the second season.
Yeah, I learned a handful of different things. I feel like I honestly learned more about um I feel like I learned more about just like myself in general than I did in like the dating sense. I mean, since I traveled through in the 50 states in season 1, the first 10 I was with a friend who had hopped in with me, and he was kind of trying to help film, and we didn't know what we were doing, but like I didn't have the finances to like pay him, and I was paying for like the hotels and gas and everything, but like so then he started running dry on funds, and he had to head back, and so I just took on the rest of the 40 by myself. And going on that adventure, I mean, I learned I guess more specifically to me, I mean, I learned in believe in your ideas and believe in yourself, be confident in yourself, take on new challenges and take smart risks and everything. So those are some of the things I learned. I also learned on just like a human to human level with dating or just connecting with people, whether that be sponsors, families, roommates, whatever. I learned that we're really all not so different. Like, yes, we're all different in different ways, but when you can, and I think this helps in dating. I think that, me and you might like different music choices, but at the end of the day, me and you like to enjoy a good meal. Me and you like to hear a funny joke. Me and you like to have a good drink. Like, we can all relate on that level. And so like everybody can, because everybody likes to be happy. Everybody likes to laugh. Everybody likes to smile. We just might have different hobbies and things, but if you can really dumb things down and relate on that, then it's pretty special. So yeah, that's a handful of things I learned, I'd say.
So cool. So I know that, well, at least I've seen in season 2 that you give the dates the auxiliary chords so they can play music in the beginning of the date. And is that strategic? Is that to find out if you're compatible, or kind of where did that idea come from?
I think it's more just kind of like an icebreaker almost, and it's funny because I feel like music, like what I've learned from my dates, like it stresses them out. They're like, oh man, is he gonna judge me on my music taste or this artist I like, or what if I play the song and he's like, you weirdo and stuff. But like, I'm not gonna judge. I'm just having fun, and maybe they'll open my eyes to a new genre or artist or song or something. And so it's just that was just one thing I came up with this that I kind of wanted to create a tradition about state to state and see different music tastes and whatnot. So just kind of a fun little icebreaker.
Oh, I love that idea. Do you find that when you really like that music already, that you have a lot more compatibilities as well on the date?
Oddly, yeah. Like I like when dates when show, and especially if it's like if it's distinctly different. Like sometimes you get the mainstream artists that everybody knows, or whether that's like a Drake or a Morgan Wallen or whatever it is, or a Taylor Swift. But then when like they play an artist that I really like that's smaller, and they're like, oh, I love this guy or I love this girl, I'm like, oh wow, like then I feel like we almost connect more because of that like smaller relatability, or like that not many girls have mentioned or dates, and so they kind of makes them stand out and separate a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, one of the things I teach my students is to really have your favorite musicians on your profile, because it's going to help you to match with people who share that in common, and that speaks to a lot deeper compatibility on so many levels, like your core values, and it's just surprising how much that can create compatibility. That's so
Yeah,
cool. I love that you do that.
I completely agree. Okay, so question, if I handed you the aux, what do you play?
Oh, right now, a niece who's an artist I found on TikTok. I think he's a little smaller artist, but he does like hip hop. He's kind of, what is he like? That would be, I don't know, same genre as like Post Malone, but a little more positive.
Okay.
Yeah, like R&B type hip hop music.
Nice. Okay. Sweet. That's awesome. See, now that's
Yeah.
cool. You do that, and then all of a sudden we could start a conversation about TikTok and artists and creators, and then it just goes from there.
I love that. And so have you ever had to play your music as kind of an intro, or do you go back and forth at all?
Yeah, sometimes the dates they'll be like, "Well, I want to hear your stuff," or sometimes like in Hawaii and Alaska when I haven't had my vehicle, they're like, "Well, now you got to get on the aux and stuff." And so then I'll throw mine on there, and it is kind of intimidating. You're like, "Man, I don't like. What if I play something and they just are judgmental about it or something?" But we it's just a fun kind of back and forth banter type thing.
Yeah, I love it. So, now without putting anybody on blast, did you find that there were some states that were easier or harder to date in?
Um, I think there were states that were definitely harder to find a date in. That's for sure. Like in terms of just finding it, like whether that's finding a date that I'm attracted to, like and obviously you get to like a California or a Texas, like these big states, there's going to be just obviously a bigger pool of women. But you get to these smaller states like a Vermont or a Rhode Island or whatever it may be, then it's like, okay, like I'm having a tough time either getting matches or getting applications or whatever it may be. Like when I got date applications, it was very like you could see the numbers just dwindle in those smaller states. And sometimes I didn't think the girls that applied would be the best fit. And so I think more so finding them than necessarily finding like a pattern of, oh, this state the girls are brutal type. Other like feel like more just finding it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So Vermont was one of the harder ones.
Yeah, Vermont, Rhode Island, I'd say Connecticut, just those like smaller, like especially when you get like it kind of Delaware, like yeah, those especially, yeah, I'd say like Vermont, Delaware, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are like just because they're smaller and everything. And maybe for people that are from that area, me being a Montana guy, it's clear across. So I don't know. Maybe it's just how I am, maybe the girls are like, get out of here, you know. But yeah, I'd say.
Interesting. Yeah, I've got students from all over the country, and different people will say, "Oh, it's harder here, it's easier here." I found that New York City for men tends to be like the easiest place because there's more women than men, and there's a lot of singles there. LA, there's more women, and they're really beautiful down there. But sometimes I have students run into like a little bit more flakiness. But really interesting to hear your take on that for sure. And so I have a little bit of a tough question. I hope it's okay. But I know in season 2 you started taking applications, but in the beginning, I'm really curious about your messaging strategy. One thing I learned when I was doing this 100 date experiment was to tell people right away what I was doing, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of unnecessary drama. And it sounds like you were doing the same thing. You were letting everybody know. So I'm curious to learn a little bit about how you were communicating with the women so that they wanted to go on a date with you, but they also had those expectations managed. And I'm wondering if you can share an example or two of what that messaging looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And it's very funny because people who are new to my page on social media, or they come across it, or my endeavor, my journey, however you want to word it, a lot of them think that I just like went on these dates, didn't tell them anything, and then all of a sudden, like they appear on TikTok, and then all the dates find out. And it's like, no, I told them and whatnot. And this, yeah, season 2, like you mentioned, the date application. So people knew what it was then when they applied. But season 1, when I was getting into it, I did exactly what you did for like an approach. I I just went right in as soon as I got a match on Tinder. If I matched with my date from New Mexico, if her name was Belle, I'd say, hey Belle, like I see that I matched with you from New Mexico, and I'm trying to go on a virtual date with a girl in every state as part of this thing I created called 50 Dates, 50 States. I was wondering if you could be my New Mexico date in this series. And,
Okay.
I was a Romeo and had 100% success rate, but I didn't. Sometimes they were probably and then it was hard. Like I look back and it was hard because I had nothing to base it off of. Now I have, I have the vehicles wrapped. I have a website. I have content. Like I have a page. I have a following. So people are like, "Oh, this is legit." Then people are like, "This guy wants to go on a virtual date," and honestly, like girls were pretty like responsive of it. Which I feel like it was because of the time we were in too, because everybody was locked in. It was COVID. Like I feel like if I were to do that now, it would be way harder because like if I didn't have a following and everything, but because things aren't as virtual, things are opened up now and whatnot. But yeah, so I just went right in for it because I didn't want to try and like start a conversation and do all this and kind of get I didn't want to build the fluff of like, oh, where are you from? Oh, how, like, what do you like? All that stuff, because I wanted to get that on the virtual date. I wanted to know them and learn all that on the virtual date. And so that was kind of my strategy, and just shot my shot right out the gate, kind of like you.
I love it. Yeah, it's so interesting. Something I teach my students and something I learned myself was just being really direct with your intentions. And I think a lot of times in dating, people think, well, I can't tell them the truth. I can't tell them what I'm doing, or I don't want them to know that I'm seeing other people. But it was surprising to me when I did that. It actually made people more interested and kind of, I don't know if this happened to you, but have you felt that anybody's become super competitive and like, I want to be the girl that changes his mind, like that he wants to settle down with? Have you had that happen?
I think so. Like I feel like there's like these different approaches in a way. I feel like I have, but I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of hard to like. I don't know. I don't fall for it. I
Yeah.
guess I just like if I connect with a date, I connect with them. But I guess in some you probably notice this and when you went on those 100 dates, like I feel like there's a lot of things you can see through with people, like and whether that's like their intentions or for it's very different obviously for guys and girls. I feel like what I've noticed more on the intention side is like, oh, are these girls, do they actually like what I'm doing and want to go on a date with me, or are they in it for clout, or do they want to win a trip at the end, or are they doing this for followers, or are they doing this for the do they like the camera more than they like me? And so it's sometimes I can kind of see through, or when they ask certain questions, and maybe it's me being too like maybe I'm critical thinking too much, but it's just things I remember because I feel like when you go on a date, you remember how you made that person feel or how they made you feel type thing. I'm curious on your end, because this is something I'm bad at. You mentioned how, like, being direct and honest and everything. So if you go on a date with a guy and you didn't have an enjoyable time and you didn't want to, have a second date, do you think you would tell him that right there on the spot? Or if he like said something like, oh, it'd be great to see you again, do you think you would say, oh yeah, maybe? Or would you just be like, no, well, how would you handle that?
Ooh, good question. I actually had so much respect for a guy who sort of did that. We had a great connection, but I didn't feel like romantically interested. And right after the date, he asked me for my take, and he knew that I was doing like videos like what you were doing, where I would give feedback after, and he liked that. He wanted that feedback. And I was like, man, that's so cool that you asked for feedback. I thought that was so, like, we became friends after that because I thought that was so cool. And I told him, I was like, I really love talking to you. I think we have so much in common. I don't feel that there's the chemistry that I need, but I would love to stay connected. And like, we still talk occasionally, even 10 years later. So yeah, I think if someone asks for feedback, totally open to that. I think when somebody doesn't, not everybody wants to know the truth, is what I've learned.
That's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it. Because I remember I had I am like a big people pleaser, and so I struggle with like being honest about, like, oh, like if I didn't want to see a date again and she was like, oh, I had a great time, like it'd be great to see each other again, like I would probably say, yeah, I'd be like, oh yeah, it'd be great to see you again and whatever, keep in touch, because I would hate to have that like look. Now I would never say that and then just never talk to her. Like I would, obviously, but I wouldn't pursue it any further. But I remember I had a friend who had told me, she said that after a date she went on, he walked her up to the door after their date and everything, and she just like flat out right there said, hey, thank you for the date tonight and everything, but I just didn't really feel it, and so thank you again, but I just don't think this is going to be something moving forward. And I was like my skin was crawling just hearing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like, I could never do that. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't.
It's hard. It's really hard even to just, a lot of times we have it kind of in, I don't know if it's just like an automatic processing thing, but we're like, yeah, I'll call you, when you have no intention of calling them.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really, first step is to gain awareness around, why am I doing that? Why am I saying that? Why am I not being more authentic? And I think it has so much to do with, we're just not yet comfortable with ourselves, and I just think it's such a journey. But the first step is just getting aware of when you're doing it, when you say something that's out of alignment with how you actually feel, and then questioning, like, why did I do that?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's very like responsive. Yeah, it's just, oh, I'll call you. Oh, let's keep in touch.
Yep. It's hard. It's so hard too when you're in person with them versus like over text message. And I think women struggle with this a lot because we're programmed to nurture. Like, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. So it's really hard when we have to say no. But I always have respect, like for my students, I work with all men. And when they tell me that the woman gave them that feedback, I let them know, like, hey, that is really respectful of her not to just ghost you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, based on your own experience, and I'm going to use the term mega dating because that's kind of what I call this, but do you think it's healthy to mega date? Would you recommend that to others?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I don't think I think it's hurtful to like limit yourself, and just because I think a lot of times what happens is people who are single, all of a sudden their friends or family or siblings or their people around them or their inner circle all start getting in relationships, and then they feel like they have to, so they almost take their standards and they lower them, and then they, oh, well, I'm just going to jump into this. And they don't really either analyze the person, they don't have enough time with that person, they don't share enough moments or experiences, and they just rush into it. And so I feel like they limit themselves a lot of the time. And whether you're in that situation or not, I think it's healthy to definitely like, see who's out there, like, and not just, maybe it's an hour away, maybe they're right next door, maybe they're a couple blocks down, like, and maybe one person's an engineer and another's an architect and others in marketing, like whatever it is, like try these different, individuals with different backgrounds and how they were raised. Were they raised very wealthy? Were they raised, more low income? What did that look like? Because then you start to kind of get a feel for, what your preference might be, or stuff like that. So I definitely would. And I think as long as you're not, malicious or as long as you set those expectations out there. You know, if me and you go on a date and we hit it off, but at the end, like you're expecting me to see nobody else and stuff, or like, you know, or we go on a second date type thing and we talk about it. Maybe that's not a thing we talk about on the first date. Like definitely me saying, hey, you know, like I'm just kind of, you know, having fun and I'm seeing who's out there and whatnot. But then I think that's a communicating that is very important because that's, you don't want to obviously lead someone on or be lying or anything like that.
Yeah, managing expectations is so important. And that's another part of like being honest and authentic in your communication. Just like saying, I'm not, you know, not saying I'm going to call when you're not going to call. You know, it's the same thing, really, but it can be scary.
Absolutely, yeah. So I definitely, yeah, I think that exploring those options are, you know, and don't limit yourself. Now, if you go on a date and you just, you know, sparks fly, all power to you, you know, full sail. But yeah, I think definitely explore those options.
Yeah. Did you feel like before you did, and I'm going to call it an experiment, but I don't know if you call it that, but before this experiment, did you ever find yourself getting overly attached to one woman or getting that one-itis that people sometimes get where they kind of feel like, oh, I really wanted to work out with that one girl?
You know, I think for me, it's I feel that I usually I never really feel that way. What I feel sometimes is you know how they say we want what we can't have type thing. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if I go on a date with a girl and I get that energy from her, like she almost not in like an arrogance way or egotistical way, but almost like I feel like she's above me or out of my league or like I have to really like be on top of my game or however you want to call it to
Mm-hmm.
like or to like connect with her. Sometimes then I feel like, man, I like really want her to like me type thing.
Yeah.
And I like, even though I don't know, I sometimes I get that way and it's not, but it's more out of like, and this probably isn't the like the the most proper thing, but I feel like it's more out of just like a game in my own head. It's not necessarily like, oh, I can see myself with them. It's just like, oh, I hope we get to a point where it's like, okay, we're on the same page. Like we both connect really well. Instead of like, oh man, it's me, you know, fighting for her attention when or whatever it is. And you know, so I think it's kind of like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's human nature to want what we feel like we can't have because that in our mind is valuable. You know, the Tesla car is more valuable because it's harder to get than the Honda, but really they have the same utility, you know.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great way to put it. And yeah, it's just it's a weird thing, but I think that for me when I go on these dates, the overall goal is just, you know, I want these dates to I want them at the end of it to have a smile on their face, whether we're compatible or not. And I want them to enjoy themselves. And that's like very rewarding for me because if I go on a date with a girl and me and her connect extremely well, and you know, she and let's say that before me, she dated five other guys, and all those five dates that she went on were terrible. And then she really had to get herself back out there. And so she's like, fine, I'll go on a date with this guy. And then me and her have a good time even if I'm not the one for her, maybe that gives her the confidence or inspiration to put herself back out there. Or maybe she's like, man, that was a lot of fun. And like, he was a nice guy. I'm going to put myself out there more. Or maybe there's other guys similar to him in ways that I'm more attracted to or whatever that may be. And if I can maybe be that bridge to that or help out in any way, like that's rewarding to me, if, even if we don't, you know, kick it off. So
I love that. I love it. It sounds like you're making dating fun, which I always thought dating was so fun because it was such a different thing than work. But a lot of people think dating sucks. So, what would you tell them to like look at it from a different perspective where it is just this fun thing that is not like work and it's not like platonic relationships. It's this own thing. Like, how would you make it more fun for people?
I think people just need to relax. Like I think people go into these dates and they just like they set these bizarre expectations, whether they like do creeping on social media or their profiles before, and then they're like, oh my gosh, like they do this, like he or she's gonna be the one, or oh my gosh, I don't know, I'm forcing my friends are convincing me to do this. This guy's a dud, or this girl, I don't know about her. Like now, just go in very open minded. Don't be expecting it to I mean, expect it to hopefully go well, but don't expect it to be, you know, you're going to put a ring on it at the end of the date or she's the one or he's the one. I think just go in and relax. And I think, you know, do something that takes your mind off of maybe just the straight conversation. Like now, personally, I'm not a big fan of dinner dates. I think dinner dates, like, it's just all you're doing is sitting there just watching each other eat, like judging each other. Like, oh, does she like, I like it. Oh man, do I have something in my teeth? How do I look? Like, all these things where, why don't we go play mini golf? Like, then there's a competitive factor. We can play and distract ourselves from something aside from just the conversation while still getting to know each other. And then let's end it with dinner. Or you know what? Like, let's go have a drink to start. That's a quick little thing. Maybe have a little sip of liquid courage, and then go play golf or whatever that is. I just think something that isn't just so back and forth, like, oh, where are you from? What do you want to do? What are your goals? How many kids? When do you want to get? Just like the simple, like, instead of an interview, have a date,
Yes, I totally agree. One of my major lessons in my program is no dinner dates on a first date at all. In fact, that doesn't come until a third date in my book. And I think doing something physically active is huge because it does take the pressure off, and it doesn't need to be stressful. It should be fun. So, like, think of something that you have on your bucket list and turn that into a date. Now you're going to have a good time no matter what, whether there's chemistry or not.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And you worded that phenomenally. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, do something fun and interesting and adventurous, and then you could get a gauge for each other's character. Maybe you go play basketball or something, and all of a sudden, you go on a date with a guy, and he's just a psycho, and he's way too competitive, throwing elbows, and you're like, whoa, or you go on and she's super competitive and she gets a bad attitude, and you're like, whoa, like, what are you saying? Or it could just be a fun, playful banter, and then you can continue that fun and conversation into the next part of the date, or second date, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So I'm curious about what's next for you. Is there going to be a season 3? Are you done with season 2 now, or do you still have a couple dates left?
I'm done with season 2, but I will be announcing my winner next week, which is really cool. And so, yeah, I'll be announcing my winning date, which is a lot of fun. And after that, basically that's kind of the finishing ties to that. Me and her will go to Puerto Rico for 4 nights, which is super exciting. But then after that, yeah, season 3, I have a lot of things I'm thinking of, and I've wrote down and whatnot, that I'm excited to kind of start working on and planning and executing. And there's a handful of different producers that have reached out to me, in talks of this becoming some sort of a show, where I've been having different meetings with different groups, whether that be on some sort of a streaming service or social media, or like on a higher end of social media, and whatnot, or network. And so a lot of moving parts, and I'm excited to put the puzzle together to see what season 3 will be.
I love it. How many dates do you think, if you could see into the future, how many seasons do you have in you before you'll be ready to get in a relationship?
Oh man. Well, if I'm being honest, like, after doing this 2 years in a row, I'm ready to, like, pass the torch on to someone else to, like, replace me in terms of the new bachelor or bachelorette, the guy or girl behind this, or on camera and going on the dates, because it's a lot to just go on 50 dates in 50 states twice and everything. But I think when I find the girl that where we mesh really well, and I can continue to try and build the brand of 50 dates, 50 states, while not being the guy on camera, like, and she's right there with me, that would be really cool. And I hope I could find that someone at some point. But it's been, obviously, being single for me with this brand makes the most sense when I'm on camera, obviously. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just know that as I'm careful with myself, because I know that as soon as I get into a relationship, I'm gonna be simping, as and I'm just be all in for her. I'm going to put her needs before mine. And so I'm just very careful, because I know that I care a lot about my brand of 50 dates, 50 states. And I have a lot of dreams, goals, and aspirations, and I really want to, like, take that to the next level. And I'm afraid if I get in a relationship, then I'll like put it on the back burner almost. And so, yeah, we'll see what the future has in store.
So cool. Okay, this is my last question. Do you ever think that you would coach others to do what you're doing?
I've thought about that. And I think that I could give a lot of helpful advice on, some of the basics. I like to say that I'm no pro by any means. I'm just like, I have some experience. But I think that I would like to, I think it'd be cool and it'd be rewarding if people could apply what I've told them or apply some practices of mine, and then they could take it. I mean, I've got that already where people be like, man, I've watched this video or I've seen this, and I'm sure you have too, with all your coaching, like, and that's got to be very rewarding and fulfilling. And so I think it would be cool. I think more so I'd probably want to, um, I think at the end of the day, it'd be really cool if I could build 50 Dates, 50 States up to be this big brand that a lot of people know. And then I could go around and do different talks and seminars and speeches, not just on dating, but also just kind of like brand building and putting yourself out there and take risks, kind of almost like a motivational speaker and dating coach, almost like combined. So I think that would be like a really cool end game for me. I would love that.
I love it. Well, I think your brand is so cool. I don't know if you've ever heard of the guy who did 100 Days of Rejection, but he has a similar brand as well. Really interesting. He filmed everything, put it on YouTube. Every day he got rejected. It was really interesting. So I love what you're doing. I think it's so cool. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with me. And, if you're ever looking for a coaching position, I'm definitely open to it. I think I love your experience.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really, it was great chatting with you, and I'm glad we could have a great conversation. And hopefully some people take this in a good way and shoot their shot, get themselves out there,
Yes, I love it. So cool. Well, thank you so much, guys. If you like this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment in the comments below. And make sure to follow Matthew Wurnig's channel, 50 Dates in 50 States. So happy to have you. And thank you so much again.